Today we'll go through chapter 7, which is on design of work systems. In this chapter we go through job design, methods analysis, motion study, which are actually some of the tools which help in designing work systems, and different working conditions, and then how to conduct stopwatch time study, do some analysis for that, and also for work sampling, and we'll touch upon compensation. So actually topics in this chapter, they have actually direct impact on productivity improvement and continuous improvement. Work design includes, first of all, job design. So within work, like a worker has a job to do. So we'll look at that in more detail. Also work measurement, and then motivation and compensation. So we'll spend some time on these topics. If you look at job design, it involves specifying the content and methods of job. So what will be included and what methods will be used. So questions like what is to be done in that work, who will be doing it, how it will be done, where it will be done. So all these are the critical questions. You can think of project teams you might have worked in class. So when you have like 3 to 4 different people in the team, so obviously such questions are tried to answer, like what will be done during the project. You sit together, plan who will do what within the project team and how it will be done. If somebody is to do literature survey or some data collection or analysis or making the PowerPoint or even making a presentation, so all those things have to be worked out and where it will be done. So even the basic things like where the team will meet, at what time, and things like that. So same thing applies to even job design. And the major objective always is productivity and safety of people who are involved. So that's very critical. And obviously quality. So keeping in mind these 3 major objectives, these questions are tried to answer while designing any job. And also a lot of emphasis is given on ergonomics, which is incorporation of human factors in design of the workplace. Even things like whether a worker will be standing while doing the work or sitting, how much they have to bend. So all those things have to be designed depending on, like a worker may be standing there for the entire shift. That's the type of work they have to carry out. So it will also include like what kind of breaks and things like that. While designing any work system, there are so many factors involved. So one has to keep in mind specialization. So actually all these factors will spend more time. We also look at behavioral approaches to job design, teams, always teams are involved. Then the tools of doing improvement like methods analysis, motion study, and different working conditions. Success of any job design, some points are listed here, carried out by experienced personnel with the necessary training and background. So people who are going to carry out this task are those people who know minute details about that particular job. They have much better understanding what it involves. So it is better that those people carry out this task. It should be consistent with the goals of the organization. So everything has to be linked. Like with organization objectives and goals, you have like departmental, within operations, finance, marketing, and within that, when it comes to a specific section, so even every activity people do in a company, when it is linked directly to the organization goals, so that company moves much better and they have much better chance of succeeding. So it also should be in a written form, like people change jobs. Somebody working for 3, 5, even 10 years may find better. So it should not happen that those skills that person developed over the years, that best-in-class practices that person developed over the years goes away with that person. It should not happen that way. So it should not be person-dependent if the work or the job being designed is more process dependent, not person dependent, then chances of success are high. So when it is a written form, that means it is formal, there is no confusion. If 10 people are asked to do a job, and if it is in written form, they all can reference that written material and try to come close to the objectives. So without written form, actually, people may do the same thing in different ways, which may not be optimal. So understood and agreed by both management and employees. Like, for example, if management comes out with a procedure which is too difficult or even unsafe for employees, obviously employees will have hard time doing that process or using that method, because ultimately those workers have to carry out the process or use the method. So their agreement is also important. So all that will influence productivity. If you look at specialization, which is one of the factors listed under while designing work systems, people who carry out any work or job, most of the time they are specialists in that area. They know more and more about that activity or that process. So for example, if you consider, let's say, doctors. So within that profession, there are so many different areas, like there are dentists, there is an eye specialist, there is an ear specialist, and so on. So because they are specialists in that, they can solve that problem or find the solution to that problem quickly. So that is the advantage of having specialization in a particular area. Even if you look at, let's say, auto repairs, mechanics generally have specialization, like they could have a specialization in correcting problems related to engine, or there could be a mechanic who has a specialization in correcting problems related to transmission. So that always helps to cut down how much time it is going to take to correct the problem. Even in our teaching, like every professor has a specialization in certain area. So some people are good at quantitative skills, some people are good at maybe some other skills. Like within a business college, there are different types of specialization one can have. And similarly, if you go to any other college, maybe arts and sciences, you have chemistry department. So within chemistry department, people have specialization in that area. Whereas in computer science department, they have different specialization. So there are a lot of advantages, obviously, within a company. For management, it simplifies the training. So all those people who need specialization in that particular area, that they can be trained together. So that simplifies it, and it leads to high productivity, and then it will also reduce the cost. Now for labor, so even people who are not highly educated, not PhDs or masters or even with undergrad degree, they may be able to do that task without any problem. And because it is simplified, they have minimum responsibilities. They may not need intervention from time to time. Little mental effort is needed. So they can just come and start doing their job. They don't have to really spend a lot of time to prepare to do that. But at the same time, it could also bring a lot of disadvantages. So for management, difficult to motivate. Because if somebody is doing the same job again and again, day in and day out, so it is very difficult to motivate that person to do something different. Worker dissatisfaction possibly resulting in absenteeism. So people don't like that work, so they may not come on a particular day. Disruptive tactics, poor attention to quality. So all that can be a problem. For labor, it is a monotonous work. So there is no creativity involved. Limited opportunity for advancement because they specialize only in that small area. So it is very difficult to move up the ladder. Little control over work. So they do not have much control. Management retains most of the control. Little opportunity for self-fulfillment. So all those are the problems. So basically, to overcome such disadvantage, people have also looked at the second factor we listed, which is the behavioral approaches to job design. So keeping in mind that a job should not be too boring, and also to make jobs more interesting and meaningful, people look at things like job enlargement, which is giving a worker larger portion of the total task. So that is called actually horizontal loading. Now please remember that horizontal loading means more work at same skill level. So it does not need any extra skill, but basically more work in that area. Now job rotation is the second tactics or strategy people use to make it more interesting. So workers periodically exchange jobs. Like I recall when I was working at Ford, within 6 years, I worked in 5 different departments. It was like working in transmission, then working with engine group, then heavy duty trucks. So different, we worked with different groups, and the advantage, for example, I had was I could learn different things, and it kept me interested in learning those new things. As you go to a new area, you come across different things, and it makes it more interesting. So job rotation is a good way to make job more interesting. Job enrichment is another strategy. So increasing responsibility for planning and coordination tasks by vertical loading. That person obviously will need more skills, so higher level of skill compared to horizontal loading. So obviously it will help that employee to move up the ladder because as and when they get new skills, they impress more people. A third major factor is motivation and trust. So while designing work, one has to keep in mind like motivation influences quality and productivity. It also contributes to work environment. So how it should be designed to recognize, say, worker when they do a good job so that they become more enthusiastic and continue to do a good job. I'm sure some of you might have come across what is called as Maslow's hierarchy, who said that there are actually 5 levels where the first level of human needs deals with physiological. So those are the basic needs like we need to eat, we need to get rest, we need to sleep. So to survive, we need to have a job. So those are like the basic, very basic needs. Now, when a person has those basic needs fulfilled, when they have food to eat, when they have a house to live, then they want safety. Second level of human needs is safety. So even if somebody has a job, now they look for job safety. Will I be able to retain the job like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and so on? The next level of human needs is social. So once they have food, once they have job, then they feel that they should be part of a group and people should accept them socially. So that's the third one. But once that need is fulfilled, then comes self-esteem, which is you want to be part of group, but at fourth level you want to be recognized better than your peers. So maybe some kind of award or maybe a raise. So people look for that. And the highest level is self-actualization. So self-actualization is people reach at some point, they reach a stage where like small increments or getting an award is not really going to motivate to do something more. So they do what they feel they should be doing and what they're happy doing. So money no more actually attracts them to like maybe change a job or things like that. So self-actualization is the highest level of human needs. This hierarchy generally people keep in mind when designing like how they will motivate workers. Now the next factor listed was teams. Within a team, like as they say, team stands for together, everyone, achieves more. So TEAM, together everyone achieves more. So the benefit of team is higher quality. So when people are together, they share their ideas and they improve upon what others are doing, incorporate best practices. So that leads to better quality, better productivity, and greater work satisfaction. There are also nowadays a lot of self-directed teams. The groups are empowered to make certain change. So this does not mean that they have absolute authority. It only means that they are simply empowered to make changes in processes under their control, so that it leads to better quality and better productivity. Now, the next factor listed, I think, method analysis. This is basically a technique which is used by the self-directed teams for making improvements. So what it involves analyzing how a job gets done. So looking at the big picture, then begins with overall analysis. So that's the second step or stage. If they are considering ergonomics, then what are the hand movements, what are the body movements, so that they can make improvements. Now, why there is a need for method analysis? Because there could be some changes in tools and equipment. So there could be better tools available or better equipments that may dictate some amount of study to be incorporated. Changes in product design, new products obviously will require looking into the methods used in more detail. Changes in materials or procedures, and it could be other factors, like if there are a lot of accidents taking place or a lot of quality problems, then obviously a team looks into that problem to solve the problem. So if you look at the overall procedure, it starts with identifying the operations to be studied. So obviously it could be an operation where more and more quality problems are coming or more accidents are taking place. And then getting the employee input. Like there's a saying in English, the person who wears the shoes knows better where it pinches. So those people who are working there, they have a very good idea about what the real root cause could be. So getting employee input is important. Third step is study and document current method. So it's like knowing where we are. If we want to go from some new place, then first we need to know where we are, and then only we can go to the next step. Then analyze the job, propose new methods, and then once you select a new method, then install it and then follow up. So if you start with the first step, selecting an operation, which means what operation should be selected for improvement. So one could consider a process or activity or operation high labor content. So generally, if something is automated or mostly done by machines, it is very easy to improve that. But when you have more labor content, and because skill level of one person and second person could be totally different, so the variability due to variability in the skill level of different people can lead to a lot of productivity losses or quality problems. So it is always advisable to consider work or operation which has high labor content. Also, it should be something which is done frequently, because that will have the biggest impact on productivity or quality. It could be something which is not safe, tiring or unpleasant, and something which has been already identified as a problem could be a good starting point. Now, to analyze any job, there is a standard method using flowchart. So you can see here, operation generally is represented by a circle, movement by an arrow, inspection by a square, delay by D, storage by inverted triangle. So as you can see, to develop this flow chart, one has to list all the activities. It might be a very small activity, and then identified whether it is operation, whether it is a movement, so on. Now, the whole idea behind doing this kind of analysis is to identify non-value adding activities. So, for example, any movement, when something is being moved from one place to other place, there is no value addition taking place. So if something could be moved just 1 meter or maybe 100 meter within a shop floor, so obviously if it is being moved 100 meter, that will be more expensive because it is taking more time, and time is cost. So time is money. So any movement is non-value adding activity. Similarly, inspection could be non-value adding. So these activities are identified, and if we can eliminate, if a particular movement from A to B, position A to B is not needed, and if that can be eliminated by probably rearranging the machines, then that is going to improve the process. So this is the whole purpose, to identify non-value adding activities. There is another tool people use. It's called worker-machine chart. So you have a worker on one side and machine on other side. So the basic idea is to identify when a worker or the machine is busy or idle. So you can see here, when a worker is working, when the machine is working, how much time it is idle, either of them. So that gives you an idea how much time a worker is really busy, depending on what kind of work has been designed, and whether the machine is being used in an efficient manner. Another tool people use is called motion study. So it is systematic study of human motions used to perform an operation. Some of the techniques people use is motion study principles. Now this is actually, these principles are mostly based on Gilbreth's work. So Gilbreth has done a lot of work in this area. They use a metric called Therbling. Therbling actually is Gilbreth spelled backward. So analysis of Therbling means basic elemental motions into which a job can be broken down. So for example, if you consider a job of taking a Xerox copy, so there are different motions or different activities we do. Maybe we place a paper in the bin, press a button, and then take the Xerox copy. So within each activity, there are body part movements. Basically, analysis of Therbligs means those basic elemental motions are broken down. Then there is something called micro-motion study. So micro-motion study goes into further detail. So they use actually motion pictures, and they use the slow motion to study the motion that otherwise would be too rapid to analyze. So even things that happen within a second, especially I think this is used by athletes to improve their timings. So they always look at very minute details and try to improve, cutting down non-value adding actions. Now coming to developing work methods. After using those techniques, one gets an idea what are the non-value adding activities. So the first step, or the first item given here, is to eliminate unnecessary motion. If possible, combine activities. Then reduce fatigue, because that can have a big impact on productivity. Improve the arrangement of workplace. So if there are too many things, if the workplace is cluttered, then even to search for a tool can take a lot of time. But if it is organized very well, and if there is a place for everything and everything in its place, then people can find something very quickly. Improve the design of tools and equipment. So those are some of the ideas. Now, coming to Therbligs, as mentioned earlier, it is the basic elemental motion that makes up a job. So this includes maybe searching for a tool, selecting it, grasp, hold, transport load, and then release load, putting it somewhere. Those are the basic things or elemental motions into which every activity is broken. And then they identify where productivity improvements are possible. Now, coming to the working conditions, you can see like all the conditions listed here, whether it is temperature, humidity, ventilation, illumination, color, everything has a very significant impact on the worker performance. If the activity is a quality inspection, where a worker is looking at a part and measuring a dimension to see if it is acceptable or it has to be rejected. But if the lighting is not good, then obviously his or her work will suffer. Related again to working conditions and noise, you can see different thresholds for hearing. The whisper, it is about 20, between maybe 10 and 30 decibels. If it is air conditioning unit, maybe about 60 to 70. But as it goes higher, let's say grinder, about 100, so it becomes very annoying. And when it is jet, maybe if it is somewhere nearby, you have to close your ears because it is painfully loud. Now, to make improvements, we should be able to measure. And work measurement, again, is a critical tool in that process. So work measurement basically is determining how long it should take to do a job. So every activity, sometimes if it is a standard activity, people do a study to find out what should be a reasonable time to complete this task. And different tools that are used given here: stopwatch, time study, historical times if it is available, predetermined data, or work sampling. So let's look at stopwatch time study. Now, number of cycles, because we need to get a representative data. Because we are sampling, the data has to be representative. It should not be done like every time only in, say, daytime between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. But you should cover morning, afternoon, even evenings. And if a company operates night shift, even it is a better idea to cover night shift. So a number of cycles are included to make the data more representative. So the basic steps are: define the task to be studied, determine number of cycles to observe. So as you know, in statistics, anything more than 30 is a large sample or decent sample, especially if there is a lot of variability expected. But you expect consistent data, then even a smaller sample size could be enough. Even maybe 5 or 10 should be enough. So one has to determine how many data points, how many cycles will be observed. Time the job. So then you collect the time, like how much time it takes to do the job, and then compute standard time. steps for standard element times. So analyze the job, check file for historical times if it is available, because that will save data collection time. Modify file times if necessary. So sometimes there could be some errors and you may have to modify some of the data points. Then some elemental times to get the normal time. So this is mostly without any additional data. So there are certain activities which are known and their activities within that job are very well documented. So the timings are available. Suppose a worker working in certain temperature level for a particular activity. So it may be true for that type of job across different companies. So they may be able to use those available data. Advantages are that based on large number of workers under controlled conditions. So because it is not only one company, but this is based on huge amount of data, and the data was collected under controlled condition. So that makes it more representative. Analysts not required to rate performance, because that is very subjective, like somebody trying to watch a worker and then trying to determine whether that is what kind of performance is that is very difficult, and it can vary from one analyst to another analyst. No disruption of operation, because you're not going to the operation to collect data, so there's no problem, and standards can be established. So it involves making brief observation of worker or machine at random intervals. So somebody who is doing this study may go at different times without announcing and only observe whether the machine or the worker is working or idle. And over few days, based on the data, one can come out with estimates of how often a person or machine is idle or person or machine is working. It does not require timing and activity. So note that they are just coming and checking or observing if the machine is running. They are not collecting any data on timing, like how much time it takes to produce one unit. That type of data is not collected. It is just the observation. So they may not even come with any file or pen or pencil, because that may have impact on the worker. So even just somebody walks through, and that person may not know that this person is doing work sampling. So person working on the machine, they will not be conscious that somebody is constantly watching. So the last item is compensation, which is again very, very important to keep people motivated. This is a time-based system, and compensation based on time. So when we talk about time-based system, employee has worked during a payday. So if somebody works overtime more than 8 hours, so obviously they will be paid more. Or it could be output based. So compensation based on the amount of output employee produces during a pay period. So even if it is say 8 hours of work, but if there is a worker 1000 products manufactured, but for the same situation there is another worker who made 1500, so 500 more units. So sometimes people want to compensate them or encourage them to do that.